plate hit the floor so hard it cracked down the middle. Rice scattered across the cold kitchen tile. Stew splashed in a dark red streak from the counter to the baseboard. Ronky stood over the old woman with her arms crossed and her chin lifted high. "Pick it up," she said, "and eat." Mama Aduke Fashola was 78 years old. Her knees hadn't bent that far in 6 years. But she lowered herself, slowly, painfully, one hand gripping the edge of the counter for balance, onto the cold kitchen floor, and she ate her dinner off the tile, in her own son's house, with her bare hands, while her daughter-in-law watched and smiled. But this story doesn't start on a kitchen floor. It starts with a woman who had the biggest heart on the whole block. And if you think you know how this ends, you don't. And because fate had already booked its flight. Oakwood Lane in East Dallas was the kind of street where everybody knew everybody, where people still waved from their porches and brought plates to their neighbors when someone had a baby or lost a job or just looked like they needed feeding. And nobody on that street fed more people than Mama Aduke Fashola, 78 years old, born in Lagos, raised in Ibadan, American for 41 years. She came to Texas in 1985 with her husband, a civil engineer named Raphael, and 2 little boys, Chidi, who was 4, and Tunde, who was still nursing. Raphael died in 2006. Heart attack on a Tuesday morning. He was eating the scrambled eggs Mama Aduke had made him, and he slumped forward in his chair without a sound. By the time the ambulance came, his eggs were cold and his wife was holding his hand and whispering prayers in Yoruba. After that, Mama Aduke raised the boys alone. She cleaned offices at night. She cooked for catering companies on weekends. She braided hair in her kitchen for $15 a head. Her fingers would ache by midnight, and she'd soak them in warm water and go right back to work. And every single evening, no matter how tired she was, she cooked. Not just for her boys, for the whole block. Mrs. Patterson across the street, the one whose husband left her with 4 kids and no car, got a plate every Sunday. The Rodriguez family next door got a pot of stew whenever their grandmother was in the hospital. And the Johnson twins on the corner got rice and chicken every Friday because Mama Aduke heard their mother was working double shifts and the boys were eating cereal for dinner. She never asked for anything back, never kept score, never stood at the door and said, "You owe me." She just cooked. And she showed up. And everyone on Oakwood Lane loved her for it. That was Mama Aduke, the woman who fed the whole block and never once fed herself first. By the time they were grown, her 2 boys had taken very different roads. And one of those roads was about to circle all the way back. Chidi had a mind like a machine. Quick, sharp, restless. He could take apart a radio at 7 and put it back together with pieces left over. He won every science fair in the district, got a full scholarship to MIT at 17. And teachers said he was the kind of student who shows up once in a generation. But Chidi was also proud, stubborn, hard-headed in the way that brilliant young men sometimes are, certain he was right about everything and angry at anyone who suggested otherwise. The night before he left for college, he and Mama Aduke had an argument. A bad one. The kind that cracks a house down the middle and leaves everyone standing on different sides of the break. Chidi wanted Mama Aduke to sell the house and move to Boston with him. Start fresh. Leave Dallas behind. Mama Aduke refused. This was her home. Her neighbors needed her. Raphael was buried 12 minutes from the front door. She wasn't leaving. "Then I'm not coming back," Chidi said. He was 18. And he meant it the way 18-year-olds mean things, with his whole chest and none of his brain. Mama Aduke stood at the kitchen window and watched him drive away in a used Honda with a duffel bag in the back seat. She didn't cry until his taillights disappeared around the corner. Then she sat at the kitchen table and wept into her apron for an hour. That was 24 years ago. Chidi called sometimes, once a year, then once every 2 years, then not at all. He vanished into the world of technology, Silicon Valley, then New York, then somewhere she couldn't follow. She heard through distant cousins that he was doing well, something with computers, something big. But he never came home, and she never asked him to. Tunde stayed. Tunde was the opposite of his brother in every way that mattered. Gentle, quiet, soft-spoken, and the kind of man who'd rather lose an argument than raise his voice. He worked as a logistics coordinator at a shipping company downtown. Good job, steady paycheck, nothing flashy, nothing loud. When Mama Aduke's knees started going bad and the stairs in the old house on Oakwood Lane became a daily battle, Tunde moved her into his home, a nice 3-bedroom on Ridgewood Drive in North Dallas. Good neighborhood, clean, quiet, grass cut every Saturday. "Mama, this is your home now," he said, carrying her suitcase through the front door. "For as long as you want, forever." Mama Aduke smiled and touched his face with both hands. "God bless you, my son." There was just one problem: Tunde's wife. She had one rule, and she made sure every person breathing in that house understood it without ever saying it out loud. Ronke Fashola, at 34 years old, born in Maryland, Yoruba heritage, though she rarely claimed it unless it served her at a dinner party. She had the kind of beauty that made you look twice and the kind of attitude that made you wish you hadn't. Sharp features, perfect makeup every single day, foundation, contour, lashes, the full production before she'd even check the mail, nails always done, hair always laid, clothes always pressed. She ran that house the way a general runs a military base. Everything in its place, everyone in their lane, nothing out of order, and God help you if you moved a cushion without asking. She married Tunde 3 years ago. Big wedding, 200 guests, a 7-tier cake that cost more than Mama Aduke's first car. Ronke walked down the aisle like she was walking onto a stage, and she was. And because from that day forward, the Fashola house was her theater and everyone in it was performing for her. At first, she was polite to Mama Aduke, the kind of polite that lives in the mouth but never reaches the eyes. She called her Ma and smiled when company was around and made sure the old woman's room was clean when Tunde was home. But the moment Tunde left for his business trips, 2, sometimes 3 weeks at a time coordinating shipments across the state, a different Ronke appeared. It started small, so small that if you weren't paying attention you'd miss it entirely. First, Mama Aduke's food portions got smaller. The plate that used to hold a full serving of rice and stew now came with half, then a quarter, then whatever was left after Ronke and her friends finished eating. "There wasn't enough," Ronke would say, and handing the old woman a plate with 3 spoonfuls of dry rice and a chicken bone with no meat on it. "I'll buy more groceries tomorrow." Tomorrow never came. Mama Aduke said nothing. She ate what she was given and thanked God for it. Then the rooms started closing. "Mama, please don't sit in the living room. I just had the cushions professionally cleaned." "Mama, don't use the front bathroom. Use the small one in the back." "Mama, I'm having guests tonight. It would be better if you stayed in your room." The house had 3 bedrooms, 2 living areas, a dining room, and a full kitchen. But within 3 months, Mama Aduke's world had been reduced to 1 room, a small back bedroom with a single window that faced the wooden fence, 8 feet by 10 feet. That was her country now. And she spent most of her days sitting on the edge of her bed, reading her Bible, and waiting for Tunde to come home. Because when Tunde was home, everything changed. The plates got full again. The living room doors opened. Ronke smiled and called her Ma, with warmth in her voice, and asked if she wanted more tea. The performance resumed. The curtain went up. And Mama Aduke played her part, because she knew that if she told her son the truth, it would destroy his marriage. And Mama Aduke would rather eat scraps in silence than break her child's home. That was the kind of woman she was. She absorbed cruelty the way the earth absorbs rain, quietly, completely, without complaint. And Ronke knew it. She could see the old woman's restraint. She could feel the silence, and she used it like a weapon. And because as long as Mama Aduke stayed quiet, Ronke could do whatever she wanted. And so the cruelty got worse, much worse. No one was supposed to see it. That was the point. and for a while, no one did. It was a Tuesday evening in February. Tunde had been gone for 9 days on a logistics run across West Texas. The house was quiet. Mama Aduke was sitting on the edge of her bed in the back room, holding her Bible open to Psalms, when she heard Ronky's voice from down the hall. "Mama, come eat." Mama Aduke stood up slowly. Her knees ached. Her left hip had been sending shooting pains down her leg for weeks. She walked down the hallway using the wall for support, one hand sliding along the paint, and she entered the kitchen. Her plate was on the floor. Not on the table, not on the counter, on the floor. Right there on the cold kitchen tile, next to the leg of a wooden chair. Rice, a small pool of tomato stew, a single piece of chicken so small it could have been an afterthought, on the floor, like food left out for an animal. Mama Aduke looked at the plate. Then she looked at Ronky. Ronky was sitting at the kitchen table, eating her own dinner from a white porcelain plate, cloth napkin across her lap, glass of red wine beside her hand, fork and knife moving with the precision of someone at a 5-star restaurant. She didn't look up. "I ran out of clean plates," Ronky said, eyes on her phone. "You can eat there, or don't eat. Up to you." There were 6 plates in the cabinet. Mama Aduke could see them through the glass door. 6 clean white porcelain plates stacked neatly on the second shelf, untouched, shining. But she said nothing. She gripped the edge of the counter, lowered her right knee to the tile first, then her left. It took her nearly a full minute. Her knees cracked so loud it echoed off the cabinets. Her hips screamed. Her hands shook as she braced herself against the cold floor. And she ate off the tile, with her bare fingers, picking rice off the cold kitchen floor, one grain at a time, her back bent, her knees pressing into the hard surface, her 78-year-old body folded onto the ground like a woman in prayer, except this was not worship. This was survival. And 3 feet away, Ronky sat at the table, sipped her wine, scrolled her phone, crossed one leg over the other, and never once looked down. This was not the first time. It would not be the last. Every time Tunde left, the plate went to the floor. And sometimes there was food on it. Sometimes it was just plain rice with salt and nothing else. One time, Ronky scraped the leftovers off her own plate, half-eaten, cold, pushed to one side with a fork, and set it on the tile. "I don't waste food in this house," she said. She never raised her voice, never threw anything, never left a bruise you could photograph. She didn't need to. The cruelty was colder than violence, calculated, surgical, deliberate. The kind of cruelty that doesn't leave marks because it doesn't need to. It lives in the height of a table and the distance between a woman's dignity and the floor. Mama Aduke never cried about it. Not once. Not in the kitchen. Not in her room. Not even in the shower where no one would hear. She prayed. She read her Bible. She sat in her small back bedroom and looked out the window at the wooden fence and talked to Raphael in her head. "I'm all right," she would whisper. "I'm all right, my love." But she wasn't all right. And they both knew it. She thought no one could see. She believed the walls kept her secret. But walls have ears, and laundry rooms have doorways. Blessing Okafor was 22 years old. She had come from Houston 6 months ago to work as a part-time house helper, cleaning, laundry, light cooking when Ronky didn't feel like ordering in. Ronka hired her because she was young and cheap and quiet and didn't ask questions. But Blessing had eyes. She saw the plates on the floor. She saw Mama Aduke on her knees in the kitchen at dinner time. Now she saw Ronky at the table with wine and a full plate, while a 78-year-old woman picked rice off the tile with her bare fingers. And it broke her heart in a way she couldn't put back together. Because Blessing had a grandmother too, back in Houston. A woman named Mama Ngozi, who raised her when both her parents died in a car accident on the Gulf Freeway. A woman who smelled like palm oil and evening prayer. A woman who gave her last plate of food to the neighbor's child and went to bed hungry with a smile on her face. Blessing saw Mama Aduk and she saw Mama Ngozi. Same hands, same patience, same quiet strength, same willingness to suffer so that no one else had to. And she couldn't look away. She tried. For 3 weeks she tried. She told herself it wasn't her business. She told herself she needed this job. She told herself to keep folding the towels and keep her mouth shut. But every time she heard the plate hit the floor, that dull ceramic thud on tile, something inside her chest pulled tighter. One evening in late February, after Ronki had gone upstairs to her bedroom, Blessing walked to the back of the house. She knocked softly on Mama Aduk's door. "Mama," she whispered through the crack. "Are you awake?" "Come in, my daughter." Mama Aduk was sitting on the edge of the bed. Her Bible was open to the same psalm she'd been reading all week. Her eyes were wet, but her face was steady. The face of a woman who had practiced composure the way other people practice breathing. Blessing sat beside her. She took the old woman's hands in hers. They were dry and thin and warm. And the hands of a woman who had worked every day of her life and never once complained about the calluses. "Mama, this is not right. What she does to you. It's not right." Mama Aduke squeezed her hands. "I know, child. You have to tell someone. Tell your son. Tell Tunda. Tell somebody. If I tell Tunda, his marriage is finished. I did not survive 78 years on this earth to break my own child's home. Then let me tell someone." Blessing leaned closer. "You have another son. The one who left. Chidi." Mama Aduki went quiet. Her eyes drifted to the window, to the fence, to the place where her gaze always went when the past knocked on the door. "Chidi has not called in 5 years, she said softly. "I don't even know where he lives anymore." Blessing held her hands tighter. "I will find him." "How?" "Mama, I am 22 years old. I have a phone and I have the internet. Trust me, I will find him." It took Blessing 11 days. She searched every night after Ronki went to sleep. She sat on her bed in the laundry room with the door closed and the brightness turned low, scrolling through company records, LinkedIn profiles, tech conference speaker lists, startup databases, and investment fund announcements. And then, on the 11th night, she found something that made her sit up so fast she nearly knocked her phone off the mattress. An article from Forbes magazine, published 6 months earlier. The headline read, "Chidi Fashola, founder of Zenith Grid Technologies, joins the Billionaires Club." Beneath the headline was a photograph. A tall, broad-shouldered man in a dark suit standing in front of a glass tower in Midtown Manhattan. A sharp jawline, deep brown skin, high cheekbones, and eyes, dark, intense, focused, that looked exactly like Mama Aduk's. Blessing stared at the screen for a long time. Her heart was beating so hard she could feel it in her fingertips. Mama Aduk's firstborn son was a billionaire, $14 billion, and he was 6 hours away by plane. Blessing did something brave, something that most people would have talked themselves out of. She found a contact form on the Zenith Grid Technologies website. She typed 3 sentences. "Mr. Fashola, my name is Blessing. I work in your mother's house in Dallas. She eats off the floor." She pressed send. Then she closed her phone. And she waited. If you are watching this right now and this story is making your blood boil, you are not alone. Because what Ronki did to that woman on that kitchen floor was not just cruelty. It was a crime against every grandmother who ever cooked for a stranger and never asked for a single thing in return. If you believe that fate always keeps its promises, subscribe and stay. Because what happens next is something Ronki Fashola never saw coming, and she will never recover from it. 3 days of silence. Blessing checked her phone every hour. Every notification made her pulse jump. Every buzz was a false alarm. Nothing. No one heard from him in 5 years. Blessing was starting to think no one ever would. Then on the 4th morning, at 6:47 a.m., her phone buzzed with a message from a number with a New York area code. 4 words. "Send me the address." That was all it said. Chidi Fashola had not set foot in Dallas in 24 years, and he had left as an angry 18-year-old boy with a full scholarship and a grudge and a suitcase held together with duct tape. He drove out of Oakwood Lane at midnight and swore to himself that he would never come back. Now he was 42. The founder and sole majority shareholder of Zenith Grid Technologies, one of the largest artificial intelligence infrastructure companies in the world, valued at $14 billion, offices in 6 countries, 3,000 employees, a penthouse in Manhattan that overlooked Central Park from 62 stories up. He had shaken hands with presidents. He had testified before Congress. He had been on the cover of every business magazine that mattered. And he hadn't spoken to his mother in 5 years. Not because he didn't love her. He loved her more than anything he had ever built. More than the company. More than the penthouse. More than the name on the Forbes list. He hadn't called because he didn't know how to say he was sorry. 24 years. That's how long he had spent building a fortune and running from a kitchen window and a woman who loved him more than he ever deserved. And now she was eating off the floor. The moment he read Blessing's 3 sentences, something inside Chidi Fashola broke in a place that no board meeting, no stock valuation, no Forbes cover could ever reach. He stood in his penthouse looking out at Central Park. The sun was coming up. The city was waking. And all he could see was his mother's face in the kitchen window on Oakwood Lane, watching him drive away. He picked up his phone. "Cancel everything." His assistant paused. "Sir, you have the Singapore partnership call at 11 and I said cancel everything. All of it. Every meeting, every call, every obligation. Get the jet fueled and ready. We're going to Dallas." "Dallas? When?" "Now." 45 minutes later, Chidi Fashola was airborne. But he didn't fly to Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. He didn't arrange for a rental car. He didn't call ahead. He didn't give anyone warning. He called his head of operations from 37,000 feet. "I need a helicopter on standby when we land. Private charter. Get me clearance for a residential landing zone near Ridgewood Drive, North Dallas." "Sir, residential helicopter landings require special permits and handle it. Whatever it costs, whatever it takes. I want to be on the ground by noon." The ground shook before anyone saw it. And it was a Thursday. 11:47 a.m. Ridgewood Drive was doing what it always did at noon on a spring weekday, sitting quietly in the warm March sunshine. A few cars baking in driveways, a man walking his dog 3 houses down, a mailman crossing the street with a heavy bag over his shoulder and sweat on his forehead. Inside the Fashola house, things were as they always were when Tunde was away. Mama Aduke was in her back room, door closed, Bible open. Her breakfast that morning had been a single piece of white bread with nothing on it. Not because the kitchen was empty, the refrigerator was full. Because Ronke handed her a slice of bread, closed the fridge door, and walked away. Ronke was on the living room couch, tablet on her lap, iced coffee in her hand. She had just come back from getting her nails done. Fresh acrylics, French tips, $45 plus tip. Her hair was freshly blown out. She looked like a woman who had everything under control. Blessing was in the laundry room folding towels and checking her phone every 30 seconds. Then she heard it. A low vibration. Deep. Like a bass note that starts in the ground and works its way up through the foundation and into your rib cage. The kind of sound you feel in your teeth before your ears even register it. Then louder. Much louder. The windows started rattling in their frames. The iced coffee on Ronka's armrest trembled and nearly tipped. The framed photographs on the hallway wall shifted a quarter inch to the left. The whole house hummed. Ronka sat up straight. "What the hell?" The sound grew into a roar. Not a plane. Planes pass over. This sound wasn't passing over. This sound was coming down. She threw the tablet aside, jumped off the couch, and ran to the front window. She pulled back the curtain with both hands. A helicopter. A sleek, black, private helicopter was descending into the empty lot at the end of Ridgewood Drive. The open half-acre that the neighborhood association had been arguing about for 3 years. The rotors were flattening the tall grass in a perfect circle, pushing waves of dust and leaves and debris outward in every direction. The roar was deafening. The mailman had frozen in the middle of the street with his mouth wide open and his bag hanging off one shoulder. The man with the dog had scooped the animal into his arms and was backing toward his garage. Every curtain on the block moved. Ronki pressed her face against the glass, her breath fogging the window. What in the world? The helicopter touched down. The rotors began to slow, the roar dropping to a deep rhythmic chop, then a hum, then near silence. The door on the side slid open. A man stepped out, tall, 6'2", broad-shouldered, wearing a dark navy suit with no tie, the kind of suit that doesn't come off any rack in any store, the kind that gets made by a tailor who knows your name and your father's name. Deep brown skin, sharp jawline, clean and defined. Clean-shaven, short-cropped black hair with the faintest silver at the edges of his temples. He moved across the grass with the kind of calm that only comes from having nothing left to prove and everything left to protect. Behind him, 2 more people stepped out. A woman in a fitted gray suit carrying a leather briefcase thick with documents, and a man in a dark blazer holding a tablet and a phone in each hand. The 3 of them walked up Ridgewood Drive in a line. Not fast, not slow. The pace of people who have been authorized to change someone's life and know it. Every porch on the block had a face on it now. Neighbors stood behind screen doors and between parted blinds. Nobody spoke. The only sound was the fading chop of the helicopter blades and the click of expensive shoes on warm asphalt. They stopped in front of the Fashola house. The tall man looked at the front door. He stood there for 3 full seconds. His jaw tightened once. Then he walked up the driveway, up the porch steps, and he knocked 3 times, hard. Ronki opened the door. She had never seen this man before. She looked at the suit, at the 2 people standing behind him on the porch, and at the helicopter visible at the end of the street, its rotors still slowly spinning, heat rippling off the engine. "Can I help you?" she said. Her voice had the tone she used for salespeople and delivery drivers, polite enough to use while closing the door in someone's face. The man looked at her. His eyes were calm, steady. But there was something behind them, something deep and controlled and dangerous, that made Ronki take a half-step backward into her own house without meaning to. "Where is my mother?" he said. Ronki blinked. "Excuse me? My name is Chidi Fashola. Aduke Fashola is my mother. I'm her firstborn son." His voice dropped 1 register, not louder, lower, the way a man speaks when he is finished asking. "And I'm going to ask you one more time. Where is she?" What happened next took exactly 9 minutes. Ronke would remember every single one of them for the rest of her life. Ronka's mouth opened and closed twice. No sound came out either time. Her face cycled through 3 expressions in 2 seconds: confusion, recognition, fear. She's in her room," Ronki said finally. "The back bedroom. She's resting." Chidi walked past her. He didn't ask permission. He didn't remove his shoes. He walked through the living room where the tablet still sat on the couch, through the dining room, past the kitchen, and his eyes swept across the tile floor for 1 second, registering everything, past the laundry room, where Blessing stood in the doorway holding a folded towel against her chest, with tears already running down both cheeks. He stopped at the last door in the hallway, the small back bedroom, and the one with the single window that faced the fence. He opened it. Mama Aduki was sitting on the edge of the bed. Her Bible was in her lap, open to the same psalm she'd been reading all morning. She looked up at the sound of the door, and she saw her son. Not the angry boy who drove away 24 years ago with a duffel bag in a used Honda. Not the voice on the phone that called less and less until it stopped altogether. Not a name in a magazine she would never read. Her son, her firstborn, standing in the doorway of her small room, in a suit that cost more than the house, with tears already forming in his eyes. Chidi, she whispered. He crossed the room in 2 steps. He dropped to his knees in front of her, and he took her hands, both of them, and pressed them against his forehead the way he used to when he was 5 years old and scared of thunder. "Mama," he said, and his voice broke. Not cracked, broke. The way a dam breaks when the water has been pressing against it for 24 years, all at once and with everything behind it. "Mama, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I left. I'm sorry I didn't call. I'm sorry I wasn't here. I'm sorry for every single day." Mama Aduk put her hands on his face, both hands, cupping his cheeks, feeling his jawline and his skin and the silver at his temples that wasn't there when he was 18. "You came back," she said. Her voice was steady, her eyes were wet, but her face, her beautiful, weathered 78-year-old face, was smiling. "That's all that matters, Chidi. You came back." They held each other for a long time. In that small room with the single window and the Bible on the bed and the fence outside. Blessing stood in the hallway and wept silently into the towel she was clutching against her chest. Then Chidi stood up. He wiped his face with both hands. He straightened his jacket, and the softness left his eyes the way a light gets switched off in a room. Click. Gone. He turned and walked back down the hallway to the kitchen. Ronki was standing by the counter, arms crossed over her chest, chin up, already building the performance, already arranging her face into something caring and warm and completely fake. "Chidi, I just want you to know, your mother has been so well taken care of here. We love having her. She's part of the family. We treat her like a—" "Show me the plates," Chidi said. Ronki stopped mid-sentence. Her mouth stayed open for a full second before she closed it. "What?" "The plates. The ones in the cabinet. Show them to me." Ronka didn't move. Her smile was still on her face, but her eyes had gone dead behind it. Chidi walked to the cabinet, opened the glass door. 6 white porcelain plates, clean, stacked, untouched, gleaming under the kitchen light. He took one out, held it up in the light. 6 plates, he said. All clean, all perfectly stacked. He set it on the counter, gently, precisely, like a man placing a piece of evidence on a table in a courtroom. Then he looked at the floor. There were scratches on the kitchen tile, faint but visible if you knew where to look. Scratches from a plate being placed on the floor and slid into position, over and over, in the same spot, next to the same chair leg. The tile was slightly discolored there, a faint ring where ceramic had rubbed against the surface dozens of times. Chidi crouched down, touched the scratches with his fingertips, traced them the way a detective traces evidence at a crime scene. Then he stood up, and he looked at Ronka. "You made my mother eat on this floor." It wasn't a question. It was a verdict. Ronki's face drained of color, her arms unfolded, her chin dropped. Her whole body seemed to shrink by 2 inches. I don't know what you're talking about. That's not what—" "Blessing," Chidi said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The kitchen was so quiet you could hear the refrigerator humming. "Come here. Please." Blessing stepped into the kitchen. Her eyes were still wet, but her hand was steady, and in that hand was her phone. "Show her," Chidi said. Blessing unlocked her phone and turned the screen around. On it was a video, 12 seconds long, shot from the laundry room doorway on a Tuesday evening. It showed Mama Aduka Fashola on the kitchen floor, on her knees, both hands on the tile, eating rice off a plate on the ground, and in the background, Ronki Fashola, sitting at the kitchen table, wine glass in her right hand, phone in her left, legs crossed, scrolling, not looking down, not once, 12 seconds. That's all it took to end a life as Ronki knew it. She stared at the screen. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. Her hands started shaking at her sides. Chidi stepped forward, not fast, slowly, deliberately. And the way a man moves when every word he is about to say has already been reviewed by a legal team at 37,000 feet. "My lawyer is standing in your driveway right now," he said. His voice was level, controlled. The voice of a man who runs a $14 billion company and knows exactly how to deliver a sentence that cannot be appealed. "By the end of today, 3 things will happen." He held up one finger. 1. This house will be transferred into my mother's name. Not Tunda's name. Not your name. Hers. My legal team started the paperwork on the flight here this morning. It will be done by end of business. Second finger. 2. You will leave this property today. You will take what you brought into this marriage and nothing else. You will not take the furniture she sits on. You will not take the pots she cooked with. You will not take the plates in that cabinet that were somehow too clean for her to eat from. Third finger. 3. My brother will receive a copy of this video within the hour, along with a full written report from Blessing documenting every plate on the floor, every locked door, every piece of bread with nothing on it. Every night you forced a 78-year-old woman with 2 bad knees to eat off the ground like she was less than human. Every single night. Ronka's legs buckled. She grabbed the edge of the counter with both hands to keep from hitting the floor. Her face had gone from pale to gray. Her carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the terror underneath it. Her lips were trembling and her breath was coming in short, ragged bursts. "You can't do this," she whispered. "Tunde is my husband. This is my home. You can't just—" Chidi took one more step forward, close enough that his shadow fell across her face and covered it completely. "You made my mother eat off the floor," he said. Each word was measured. Each word landed like a stone dropped into still water. "In the house her son built for her comfort, while you sat 3 feet away at the table and drank wine. You looked at a woman who cleaned offices at midnight and braided hair for $15 a head so her children could eat. And you decided she was beneath you." He paused. Let the silence fill the kitchen like smoke. "This house was never yours. This family was never yours to break. And this floor?" He looked down at the tile. "This floor will never see her knees again." He turned to the woman in the gray suit standing in the kitchen doorway. "Start the transfer. Call Tunda." "I'd send the video." The woman nodded, opened her briefcase on the counter, and began pulling out documents. Ronki slid down the side of the kitchen counter and sat on the floor, the same cold tile floor she had forced Mama Aduke to eat on. She sat with her back against the cabinet, her designer dress wrinkled against the tile, her hands pressed over her face, her perfect French tip nails digging into her own forehead. Nobody helped her up. Nobody said a word. By 1:15 p.m., a second vehicle had arrived. A black SUV. Inside were 2 members of Chidi's legal team carrying folders of documents that had been prepared in the air between New York and Dallas. The house transfer papers were spread across the kitchen table by 1:30. Everything was signed, notarized, and filed electronically by 2 o'clock. And a moving crew was called for Ronka's personal belongings by 2:15. Tunde called at 2:22 p.m. Blessing answered. She handed the phone to Chidi without a word. The conversation lasted 4 minutes. Chidi spoke slowly. Tunde spoke even slower. There were long stretches of silence on the line, the kind of silence that happens between 2 brothers when there is too much to say and no words big enough to hold it. Then Tunde said one word, "Mama." He was on a flight home by 3 o'clock. By 4 o'clock p.m., Ronki's suitcases were loaded into the back of a taxi idling at the curb. She stood on the sidewalk in front of the house she had ruled for 3 years. The house where she had locked an old woman in a back room and fed her bread with nothing on it and put her dinner plate on the tile floor next to a chair leg. The neighbors were watching. Every single one of them. Standing on porches, sitting in lawn chairs pulled to the edge of driveways, arms crossed, faces still. Nobody said a word. The silence on Ridgewood Drive that afternoon was louder than any helicopter. Ronki got in the taxi. She did not look back. The door closed. The car pulled away from the curb and turned the corner and disappeared. Nobody waved. At 5 p.m., the sun was starting its long golden descent over North Dallas. The light came through the kitchen window, warm and amber and gentle. Chidi sat at the kitchen table with Mama Aduke. He had changed out of his navy suit. He was wearing old jeans and a simple gray t-shirt, and he looked, for the first time in 24 years, like the boy who used to sit in this exact position and eat whatever his mother put in front of him. And between them on the table were 2 plates, full plates, real plates, from the cabinet. Jollof rice, pepper stew with goat meat, fried plantain on the side, 2 tall glasses of cold water. Mama Aduke had cooked. For the first time in months, she had stood at that stove and made food with her own hands. Blessing had tried to help. Mama Aduke shooed her away. "This one," she said, "I cook myself." Now she sat across from her firstborn son, at the table, in her kitchen, in her house. She looked at the food, then she looked at Chidi. "You came all this way in a helicopter," she said quietly, a small smile pulling at the corners of her mouth. "Just to eat rice with your mother?" Chidi smiled. For the first time all day, a real smile, the kind that starts deep in the chest and takes its sweet time reaching the mouth. "Mama," he said, "say there is no meeting in the world more important than this plate right here." Mama Aduke reached across the table and held his hand, her dry, thin, warm fingers wrapped around his, the same fingers that had braided hair for $15 a head, the same fingers that had carried plates across Oakwood Lane for every neighbor who needed feeding. "Don't let it get cold," she said. They ate together, at the table, on real plates. In the kitchen where Mama Aduke had once kneeled on the floor with her bare hands in cold rice, and outside the window, the helicopter sat at the end of Ridgewood Drive. The pilot leaned against the side, drinking a bottle of water, watching the sunset paint the Dallas sky in streaks of orange and gold. The neighbors had gone back inside. The mailman had finished his route hours ago. And the man with the dog had taken the dog for a second walk, just to get another look at the helicopter, and had finally gone home. Ridgewood Drive was quiet again. But it was a different kind of quiet now. The kind that comes after something wrong has been made right. And in the kitchen, the house smelled like what it was always supposed to smell like. Home. Mama Aduke Fashola never ate off that floor again. Not because her son was a billionaire. Not because the helicopter shook the windows. Not because the lawyers had documents or the video had evidence or the money made it possible. Because someone saw her. Blessing Okafor, a 22-year-old girl folding towels in a laundry room, saw an old woman on her knees and refused to look away. She didn't have money. She didn't have power. She didn't have a helicopter or a legal team or a Forbes article. She had a phone and 3 sentences and the kind of courage that changes everything. If Blessing had looked the other way that night, if she had kept folding those towels, if she had told herself it wasn't her business and kept her mouth shut, Mama Aduke would still be on that kitchen floor right now. But Blessing didn't look away. She couldn't. Because when you see a 78-year-old woman eating off the ground in a house full of clean plates, you don't get to pretend it isn't happening. If you believe that the people who hurt the helpless always pay the price, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Because in these stories, the proud always fall, and the humble, they always rise.
Años exactamente, bueno, no exactamente, ¿no? Un grupo de soñadores en La Paz decidió fundar algo que trascendería generaciones. El glorioso Club Bolívar. No imaginaron que... Oye, me he esforzado al hacer el discurso. ¿Qué ponen ZZ, chat? Basta, me he esforzado, se los juro que me he esforzado, bro, basta. Por favor, me he esforzado en el discurso, respétenme un poquito, chat. Bueno, igual lo voy a leer, me la chupan, la verdad. Chat, nefastos. Son unos envidiosos, ¿saben? Son unos envidiosos. ¿En qué me quedé? No imaginaron que ese nombre se convertiría en un sinónimo de grandeza, lucha y de orgullo nacional. 101 años después, Bolívar no es solo un club, es un sentimiento que se hereda, que se sufre y se celebra. Últimamente sufrimos mucho por Robato, ¿no? Es el latido de miles de hinchas que en cada victoria y en cada caída nunca abandonan, ¿verdad? Nomás. Porque ser celeste no es una elección, es una forma de vivir. Muy bien, qué lindo, un aplauso. Bravo, bravo. Muchachos, tremendo discurso. Buenas noches, Edito, ¿cómo estás? Por lo menos ponte tu chompita, pues, un busito para leer el discurso. A ver, cállate, Gabo, ¿vos quieres ser baneado? Este discurso lo he hecho en mi cama, pensando en lo que es ser bolivarista, la verdad. Un aplauso, por favor, y con ayuda también del gran ChatGPT. Un aplauso para ChatGPT. Ah, ¿cuál era la finalización de un ratito? Dice, que estos 101 años sean solo el comienzo de muchas más llenos de alegría. Felicidades, Academia. Felicidades, Bolívar. ¡Bravo! Aplausos para ChatGPT, muchachos. Para vos no, dice. Buenas noches, muchachos, ¿cómo están? Gracias por estar aquí, perdón por prender tan tarde. La verdad estaba viendo mi serie, estaba viendo el regreso de Justin Bieber. Bueno, toda la tarde me vi fútbol, hasta vi el partido del Tigre. Vi el partido de River, vi el partido de Oriente. Las declaraciones de Martins, tremendo lo de Martins, bebé, le tiró palo a Villegas, pero bien tirado. Huevada, en su cama lo hizo todo pajeado pensando en el... No, ¿qué dice este Arielito? Oye, ¿quiénes vamos, no? Mi sobrino de kinder redacta mejor. Dile eso a ChatGPT, yo no he redactado. ¿Qué me estás molestando a mí? Felicidades. Qué basado. Pues la verdad nomás. ¿Qué quieren que les diga? A ver, ¿qué les puedo decir, muchachos? Yo no publiqué nada en mi página, la verdad no hice nada estos días. Han sido momentos difíciles. Bien triste, ¿no? Mentira. Pero no, muchachos, bueno. Quiero felicitar a todos los que son bolivaristas y hoy en día más que nunca, ¿no? Que es difícil ser bolivarista en el sentido de todo el contexto que estamos pasando con el técnico. Pero si lo ven por el otro lado también hay que sentirnos orgullosos porque hemos llegado a estos 101 años. Creo que como la institución mejor parada, tanto económicamente, futbolísticamente y dirigencialmente diría, pero no, creo que no, ahí nos falta, ¿no? Ese eslabón para poder ser una institución sólida. Y como ayer creo que lo decía Dardo Gómez en su publicación en el Cholet, que Dios mío, ¿de dónde cagan tanta plata, bebés? Más fuegos pirotécnicos que en el aniversario de La Paz, no mames. Tremendo, felicidades a los del Cholet y a ver si pasan pues algunos monies. No mentira. Que dijo que el dirigente tiene que estar siempre al lado del hincha. Y eso es mucha verdad. Y no es por darle palo a Claure, porque él tendrá sus funciones, las cosas que tiene que hacer. Pero creo que por esa parte que estoy... Uy, ¿qué? No, todavía no va a arrancar la fiesta, Tucán, tranquilo. y por esa parte creo que está bien, ¿no? Está bien. Y bueno, se vienen unas futuras elecciones donde el principal candidato es Dardo Gómez a seguir manejando lo que es este club tan bonito que es Bolívar, ¿no? Por detrás, obviamente, yo creo que tiene que haber gente que lo asesore. Espera, ¿mi gatita se echó pipí? No, ya, más bien. Me ha asustado, chicos, la verdad, me ha asustado. Ya saben ustedes, rayada está mi gatita últimamente, ¿no? No, ¿qué dice este Edipox? Y bueno, muchachos, nos espera, creo, un futuro grandioso. Yo lo dije, creo que esta es una oportunidad ya con el Stadium de una vez establecernos como un club de fútbol, pero serio, y fuera de ser autosostenible, que se proyecte a más, ¿me entiendes? No estancarnos en solo ser un club boliviano, sino ya empezar a soñar con, no sé, a ver, por